and so I went into the drawing room and lay down on the carpet by the radiator. Thermal came with me. If he was going to be a writer himself, he'd better see how it was done. He lay down beside me and thought for 30 seconds and thought hard for 30 seconds or so until he fell fast asleep. This being a writer seemed a very pleasant occupation. I turned over a radio piece in my head. It was to be about the spiders who drift into the house during late autumn when the weather turns nasty. I don't think it has anything to do with it being cold outside. It's simply that the television programs improve around that time. And then, of course, there's the bonus of live football on a Sunday. Thoughts flew across my mind, passing the one travelling in the opposite direction. The thought that is always there, that this was no way for a grown man to earn a living. I stared up at the leaves of an enormous Swiss cheese plant. Alien had polished the leaves that very morning, and I was just thinking that she had missed the underneath bit, where a small white kitten walked across my chest on its way to the plant pot. I can't talk today. I examined his undercarriage very closely as he padded over my face, and then the leaves shook as he landed on the soft earth. He swung around slowly, like a polar bear on a glacier mint, and then, lowering his rear end down to a workmanlike height, he threw his head back, closing his eyes, and began to thrutch. No! He didn't seem to hear me. Don't you dare! I was scrambling to my feet and waving my arms. The kitten's eyes were wide open now, and his body froze in mid-thrutch. What? Don't you dare. How do you mean? I plucked him off the plant pot, and holding him out to dry in front of me, rushed him into the kitchen. What are you doing? Put me down. I put him down in his litter tray, and then, sinking back on my haunches, I waited. He was horrified. His little face darted through a dozen different patterns as he fought to regain control of his bowels. Finally, his expression came to rest at smug, and he relaxed a little. Come on. No. Do it here. Here? Yes. Never. Right. I picked him up again, and racing out through the back door, I carried him down the steps and into the courtyard. A thin drizzle danced half-heartedly on the rhubarb leaves as I planted his bottom firmly on the wet soil. He shuddered in disgust, but he could see that he was now dealing with a hard man who wasn't prepared to discuss the matter any further. Don't look, then. That seemed reasonable enough. I turned away and walked back up the steps. From the balcony I had a bird's-eye view of the small kitten who had held on far too long and was now having a hell of a job persuading his bowels that he hadn't meant it, and for God's sake stop sulking. His little body flexed itself like that of a weightlifter going for the big one. The shoulders swooped. That was rather unpleasant. She's in the kitchen now, so it should be fine. Yeah. Just trying to find where I was. The shoulders swooped, the neck braced itself, the brain locked into neutral, and the back protested violently. The head looked towards the heavens for help, and then he saw me watching him. I turned away. Then I looked down again. He was covering up the evidence, shifting great lumps of sodden soil that rolled on and then immediately rolled off again. It would have been a damn sight easier than this in the comfort of his own plant pot. The huge wooden gate to next door's courtyard swung open and Patrick appeared. Hello there. Hi, Patrick. Oh God, he'll see thermal. He came over to his side of the hedge for a few for a few words, while here on my side the little kitten heard the footsteps approaching and peeked at our neighbours beat through the roots. From up on the balcony I felt like an umpire at some weird sort of tennis match. You look as though you've had a hard day, Patrick. I recognise those boots. They're all hard, Deric. That voice rings a bell. I wish I was a writer, sitting in the warm all day. From a long time ago, back in my past, the kitten rearranged his head to get a better angled look. There's my bucket. It's all coming back to me now. He tried to work his way through the roots. His childhood had been spent on that bucket, but the roots were too thick for him and he got his shoulders stuck. That kitten hasn't come back. It hasn't? It was going its level best right now, at that very moment. Let me say that one again. It was going its level best right at that very moment. In no time at all, it would have the hedge over. There's something I ought to tell you, Patrick. I started, but mercifully the wind blew my words away and he didn't hear me. Anyway, he went on. It's probably for the best. I'll bet it's found a good home, and it was no life for it here. Not with us out all of the day. The kitten who had found a good home was now backing out of the leafy cul-de-sac and making his way down to the gap in the hedge where he disturbed a moth who should have been dead weeks ago. God had kept it alive for just this very moment. As months go, it was knackered, but it had just enough staying power to keep it inches ahead of Thermal as it led him a dance across the courtyard and well away from the hedge. Anyway, must get some work done before the light goes. Patrick began to haul stones across to the small wall he was building, and over on my side of the hedge the kitten was putting on a ballet worthy of an Arts Council grant. It had been a long hard summer for the moth, and try as it might, it couldn't raise itself up over a foot above the ground. But since the kitten had a high jump record of only 9.5 inches, there wasn't going to be an awful lot of blood spilt on that courtyard. And then the moth made a bad mistake. It dropped dead in midair, and Thermal caught it. He'd never counted on this happening, and he panicked. He stirred its inert body once with his paw and told the moth that he was only joking, but then, when it didn't move, he turned straight around and made for the gap in the hedge. Then I panicked. I couldn't shout at him, or Patrick would hear me, and we weren't ready for that yet. And so I coughed. The kitten stopped, and I coughed again. He looked up. What? Now? This minute? Oh, alright then. He took a slight detour to avoid the corpse and padded back up the steps. That's a bad cough you've got there, shouted Patrick. Pleurisy? Pleurisy? I don't know how to pronounce that. I shouted back. What is? Asked the kitten as it reached the balcony. I told him as I helped him in through the door with my foot. All right, he grumbled, and he pitched head first across the hall carpet. Keep your hair on. Right. That was the end of chapter 6. If there's anything you'd like me to read after this, then go straight ahead and tell me in the comments. Sorry about Lola, by the way. Yeah. Anyway, I will see you tomorrow then, I guess. Bye bye.